Paradise Valley School District. He's a member of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix, where he leads a theater group. He's been here numerous times, and he's never failed to entertain us, as well as to share some very deep thoughts about our faith. Michael Relic.
It's Gratitude Month. All right. I'm going to talk about someone today who's the most gracious, the most full of gratitude. I'm sure you have someone like that in your life. Someone who's always full of positive message, a hug, something that you take away and connect with yourself. And we connect with this person I'm going to talk about. We connect with them every year. In many of our churches, we enact a flower communion ritual of his design, which is this amazing creation, holy Unitarian ritual. We don't have many of those. We need more Unitarian rituals. We sort of still walk in the path of our Western cultural Christian tradition in terms of how we worship. And then you read about Unitarians and their lives and how original and how dark the path was and how they found bright places. And so this man's story is definitely about a search for a positive message, a search for how to connect to others. It's basically his life is the flower communion. So first, I guess we should talk about flower communion. In the spring, you bring a flower. I know you guys already know this, but I'm going to... You bring a flower, you put it in a vase. Everyone brings their own flower. Your flower represents your presence in the community. It's very individual. You may be pink. You may be a little subdued. You may smell, you may not. At the end of the ritual, you take a flower. It's a different flower. Represents someone else. The person you'd like to become. The presence of someone else in the community that's had an influence on you. And you may not even know who that person is. You may not know where that flower came from. And part of this ritual is talking about the gentleman who came up with the idea, the Reverend Norbert Čapek. And it's usual to tell facts about his life at a flower communion, that he developed this ritual, that he built the biggest European Unitarian church in Czechoslovakia, his homeland. The fact that he died in a Nazi concentration camp. And this all seems heroic enough. It identifies our Unitarian forebear. It gives us a connection to a dark time. And it lends credence to a faith tradition and the ritual that's grown out of that time and into some light that we give it now. Of course, when it comes to writing a description of Čapek, I find it sort of difficult to talk about his life because it's just so big, so complicated, and historical and emotional. It sounds good, but in a flower communion, you've got a lot of kids and everyone bringing flowers, and it's difficult to get to really know some of the details of his life. So I'll read something about his life and then end with some hymns that he wrote. He wrote 96 hymns. He's done everything. Okay, so which is an extra challenge to talk about. People that are that great, and I'll get into that in a minute, how we represent great people like this. Čapek was raised under Catholicism, but the real formative years came when he worked as a Baptist. Worked as a Baptist in the Germanic lands prior to the formation of Czechoslovakia. He just started congregations everywhere he went, very successful. I grew up Baptist, and I can tell you how loving they can be, how good at preaching they can be. However, the other shoe ultimately drops with the Baptists. At some point you realize the strictures of the religion. The way, if you don't believe everything along the lines of what is preached, you're not all in, and perhaps you're not enough of a Baptist. Chapek, through his successes and popularity in the denomination, was ostracized. His friends and colleagues started sending suspicious letters about his talk about unity, the unity of God, the search for God within all of our hearts, the empowerment of each of us to find our path. It wasn't very Baptist. Chapek had ideas about the unity of God and the freedom of humanity to participate in God's plan. And this was enough to cast doubt on his activities and leadership. So he was brought to trial. There are Baptist trials, apparently. And twice he's brought to trial, found not guilty. And eventually he stopped going to church. He was arrested by the Catholics for being Baptist, and now, in a way, by the Baptists for being himself. So he moves to the United States and realizes he can't even afford to live on a minister's salary anyway. I could have told him that. And he started to work as a psychologist. He found having a degree would improve his standing, so he wrote to a correspondence college. There were a lot of colleges like this, mid-20th century, early 20th century, that you could just kind of write to them, take a few courses. He had a divinity degree already, and then they would give you the doctor in front of your name. So he received a Doctor of Divinity degree, earning him the doctor for his psychology practice. I'm glad you caught that. He got a Doctor of Divinity degree so he could put a doctor before his name so that he could then practice psychology and therapy. And he had a lot of interesting theories. Again, he's a very generous, full of gratitude sort of person. And he's always wanting to help. Credential or no, he's going to find a way to help you. At some point after moving to the New Jersey, New York area, he sent his children to different congregations. He wasn't going, but he sent his children. My dad did the same thing. Just sent me off to church. As his children came home each Sunday, he found the teaching not to his liking. So the next Sunday, he sent them to another church. This went on several weeks. They came home. He asked the kids about it. He didn't like what they were teaching. Different church. One Sunday they came home. He asked about it as usual. And this time he found it interesting. The Unitarians. The lengths we have to go through to survive in a career, in a religion, to find oneself, and ultimately come home defines Chapek's life. Now, Chapek early in his life had wanted nothing to do with the Unitarians. He had approached them trying to raise money, engage people of different faith traditions to support his social work in his native Czechoslovakia. He was rejected by the Unitarians. In a way, Unitarians were sort of following the lead of the United States in terms of, we're just going to do our own thing. Even as World War II was approaching. But at some point, after his children began to attend the local Unitarian congregation, Chapek began to see the faith, our faith, as the single best hope for humanity. He asked and received support from the Unitarians this time in his life to return to Czechoslovakia, where he built a huge Unitarian congregation. Well over 1,000. In a very formational time in the country's history. And Unitarianism fit well with the social liberty of a country that's coming out of control of a Hungarian empire and earning a founding name that included and affirmed the Czechs and the Slovaks that were living there already. And Čapek was all about that affirmation. He knew his people needed social solvency, religious kindness. These are basic needs, he felt, toward developing a higher consciousness. If we're surviving well, then we can speak to each other with respect and help each other find a spiritual place. This sounds a lot like our UU principles: respect, self-worth, discovery. Unfortunately, there were many forces working against this sort of bright-eyed man that we're talking about. And I think he knew what was coming before World War II broke. When his then wife Maja left for the U.S., he knew he would not see her again. They had moved to the U.S. early in his life. Now he's returning back with Unitarian support. And Maja then comes back to the U.S. because to tour and lecture. Čapek's country was always in the middle of conflict, but he always kept raising money, offering service, preaching messages of hope. Even during Nazi occupation, the church was offering 2 to 3 meetings a night, from Bible study to personal psychology, childcare, nutrition. And the Nazi officers who observed his sermons, they could tell something was fishy, but they could not interpret as positive messages of hope, which the congregation knew was all about anti-occupation, as anything other than a message about personal growth and doing your best through hard times. Čapek was so alive and energetic at every stage in life. Strategic, but mostly loving. So when it came time to write during the flower communion ceremony, to write about his life, it seems too much to put in a ritual about the man whose life is very large. Ultimately, I wrote a play about his kind of graciousness and his kind of love. He doesn't appear in it because he is so much a personal force. And it was difficult in our theater group to find someone that could really just take that on. I am now Čapek, okay? And so what we did is we had a play about all those who were touched by his life. His wife, who we met in New York at a public library while they were discussing the plight of the Czech people. His 10 children, many of whom he had to raise when they lost their mothers, his first 2 wives. And there was a letter written to his wife, his third wife, Maja, to whom he was most beholden and who lived with him and apart from him during most of the trials of his life. The letter was written during his last month in the Dachau death camp in Germany, where he was sent because he was caught listening to a small radio given to him by his congregation. He and his daughter were actually sent to prison. He, because of his many writings, they were able to detain him and keep him in camp. His daughter was eventually freed, but he ultimately was sent to a concentration camp. This letter, which figures prominently in the play that I'm talking about, the letter to his wife was somehow secretly smuggled out by another minister who stayed with Čapek in the so-called minister's tent in the camp. So I'm going to read it to you. And it's very personal, but I think we can sense his love for not just his family, but for humanity and country. I think we can understand why the facts of his life, while amazing and interesting and complex, cannot express enough what those around him felt and what he felt. Okay, letter to Maja, just 2 months before he is recorded as killed in the camp. my dearest, my one and only wife. These are my final hours and my final thoughts on you, the children, on everyone and everything dear to me. I have felt more and more inside that there is no other way out. With ever-deepening remorse for you, whom I am leaving a widow, and for the children who will be losing their father, and for those who will be losing a kinsman, a friend, a companion, a colleague. Today a letter came from you all, with your blessing, and with expressions of love of our best and most beautiful dreams, and of those closest to us. Thank God for them, especially on this day. I can bear the remaining 4 or 5 hours, and I will not be downcast, but will rather give myself over to thoughts of you all, who are most dear to me, the past and the future, and about your good and happy future, so well deserved, when you will bring to fruition the best possible life, one that I would not have been so happy to have lived, one that I would have been so happy to have lived with you so simply, in the fullness of a tried and tested love for others and for God. There's so much I wanted to make up to you for and to give to you. But I believe that even so, you will all be blessed. I am faithful to my best and highest hope, resolve, and belief, wishing everyone well, believing in the future good for all of you, the family, the nation, humanity, and especially those most sorely tried. You of all people will understand what I mean without words. You will be stronger than any pain and misfortune, and that as before you will now be supported and strengthened by all the faithful, to whom I send my endless and loving gratitude. I know that everything that remains uncompleted after me, you yourself will complete. Just as you have completely and wisely cared for me in the past, O you best of all people. And if I have offended or harmed anyone, may they forgive me. My last breath will be for you and the children. The sign of the cross on your foreheads, your mouths, and your heart, from Father. Chopik himself is the flower that we place in vases when we come together in communion. His life brings to us the notion that all is not lost, that we will never truly lose each other, that our unfinished work will be done by others. Hopefully his faith becomes ours as we think of him and those others that have fallen, those in our lives that we have gratitude for. It truly is more than flowers, a vase full of the Spirit. As I mentioned, he wrote lots of hymns. I set a couple to, we've sung a couple already. We're going to sing 2 in our hymnal. But I've set a couple others to music myself that I wanted to play for you now. They're both composed in prison a few years before his death. He was in prison for a while. One is... and the 2 represent the sides of him. One very joyous, even in the darkest times. The other more thoughtful. So I've set it to music, and I'm going to just set up real quickly, and so that we can hear these. They're beautiful pieces. One is called Among Children, and one is called In the Depths. Both composed 1942 in Dresden prison. among children. Among children is the fountain of youth. Among children, the whole world transfused in a rosy hue. Among children, the whole world round cannot find one treacherous soul. As in a crystal clear stream, you can see all the way round. Among children, the laughter bubbles bright. Even from the tiniest reason for joy, hardly ever do you see a tear, but it changes at once into a smile. Among children, love sings its sweetest melody. It runs from heart to heart and chases away every hint of anger. Among children is the fountain of youth. This one, in the depths. In the depths of my soul, there where lies the source of strength, where the divine and the human meet, there quiet your mind, quiet, quiet. Outside let lightning rain, horrible darkness frighten the world, but from the depths of your own soul, from that silence will rise again, will rise God's flower. From the silence will rise again. Return to yourself, rest in yourself, live in the depths of your soul, where the divine and the human meet. Tune your heart to the eternal, and in the depths of your own soul your panting quiets down, where the divine and the human meet, there is your refuge. if we could turn together now and sing one of his hymns in our hymnal. View the Starry Realm of Heaven, number 28. Please rise as you're willing and able. Sing with us. View the starry realm of heaven, shining distant empires seeing, sky song of celestial children, turns each winter into spring, turns each winter into spring. Great you are beyond conception, God of gods and God of stars. My soul soars with your perception. I escape from prison bars. I escape from prison bars. You, the one within all forming, in my heart and mind and breath. You, my guide through hate's fierce storming, courage in both life and death, courage in both life and death. Life is yours, in you I grow tall, seed will come to fruit I know. Trust that after winter's snowfall, walls will melt with truth will flow. Walls will melt and truth will flow.
As we end today's service, let us keep in mind those joys and sorrows that have been expressed here, and those people that are near and dear to us, Reverend Leroy, the veterans among us, our children's garden. Please check it out. The recipients of our shared plate, Coriel's goal of running in a half marathon, and the hopes and aspirations of us all. Please join me now in reading our mission statement as a demonstration of support to our fellowship. This church provides a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for our lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. And now, Michael Relland again for our closing words.
Suffolk has 3 hymns in our hymnal, this from the 3rd that we haven't sung. Handful of pebbles, high mountain passes, depths of the ocean, dew on the grasses, great things and small with the light gently glowing, word of the wordless song, our vision still growing.
And thank you to Michael, to Barry for sharing his flute with us, and of course, as always, to Joe Cleland for beautiful music.